Hey guys, Lytane here, and man, I am so hyped for Crash Team Racing, the new remaster that's coming out. It's going to be so cool. Because of that, it's made me think about all things Crash Bandicoot. I already reviewed Crash 1 on this channel, and now I want to have a look at Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, and see if that one is worth it. Crash Bandicoot 2 was made by the same team that made the first game, Naughty Dog. They released this game only 13 months after the first one, which is actually a very fast turnaround, especially back in the day. Starting off where the last game ended, Cortex is blown off his blimp and crashes back into the island where he discovers a crystal. These crystals have immense power and Cortex puts together a plan. Fast forward and we see Crash lazying around with his sister Coco when her laptop battery dies and she asks Crash to get her a new one. Good motive for a brand new adventure. Could you imagine if that was all, like no other plot, just heading home to get a battery? Man, that would be the best plot ever. But we do get more plot when Cortex kidnaps Crash and beams him aboard his new space station satellite thing in space. Here he tells Crash that he is now a good guy and he's trying to save the world by getting these crystals and putting them in a safe place. He also kidnaps Coco just to show that he's a good guy. He's trying to keep her safe, okay? Yeah, he's a real top bloke. But as the game is called Cortex Strikes Back, man, I'm pretty sure he's gonna be the villain. Crash doesn't believe him either, but he does help Cortex in the hopes of saving his sister and I guess the world too. But can Crash do it? Can he save his sister, bash those boxes, and ride polar bears so freaking cute they make you go, "Aw," whenever you see them? Or will he die trying? Whoa! It's going to be exciting. Crash Bandicoot 2 is an upgraded version of Crash Bandicoot 1, which is no surprising because that's what video games do. When you make a sequel, you try and make it better than the old one. Here they upgraded the graphics, they upgraded the sound, they upgraded the scope of the game, they upgraded how many, levels and variants and all this other kind of stuff. They just put as many upgrades into the game as they could possibly do. But Crash feels relatively the same. He can do all the things he could do before. He can run, he can jump, he can spin, he can ride animals. But Crash is a little bit different in the sense that he is more floaty in this game. His jumps feel that little bit more higher, you can control him in the air a little bit more, and he has a bigger landing area than he did before, so it feels like you can make some jumps that you couldn't make in the first game. Overall, he just feels that little bit different, a little bit easier to control. Added to the controls this time is that you can crouch, you can slide, you can do this crouch walk thing, you can do a high jump, and you can do a slide, crouch, high jump thing hybrid. And all of this is controlled with the one button. So depending on context and how fast you're moving and what you're doing, pressing that one button will do a variety of different things. The big change to the game is the new hub world system. In Crash 1 we had 3 islands and each level came one after the other, a very typical video game form. But here we have various floors and each floor has 5 levels on them. The name and the design of the portal for each level is unique and offers a clue into what type of level you will be getting yourself into. I love this design and it keeps the hub world looking fairly cool. You can also do these levels in any order as well, which is really interesting. You do have to finish them all in order to advance to the next floor, but you can spin through them in any order you wish. This level choice helps with some of the more frustrating levels in the game, because if you get stuck at a particular point and you just really hate this level, instead of getting stuck there for the rest of the game, you can just leave the level, play one of the other ones, and then eventually come back around to it. Sure, if it's your last level and you have to finish that one before you move on, then you're kind of stuck, but at least you do get some options and you can play other things in the meantime. Each level now has 2 goals in them as well. You don't just have to reach the end, you have to collect those crystals that Cortex wants you to get. There's one in every level, and this is fairly easy to do. They are right on the main path. They're usually halfway to 2/3 of the way into the level, and they're just really hard to miss. So it's not a terribly challenging goal, but it does add this little sense of progression that you're getting these things and that you're collecting them, and it feels like you're just moving forward through the game instead of just trying to go from one end of the level to the other. Finishing a level, Crash does his signature dance and he throws whatever you have collected up into the door frame, which is for tracking purposes. This helps with the game completion and extras so much, seeing that a level not only has a crystal and a gem, but what's that? Is that a colored gem? Ooh, how do you get that? This adds a replayability to the levels that wasn't really there in the first game. More levels also need the color gems in order to get the box gem, and to find those color gems, those are a doozy. Each one of them is hidden behind a secret. There are plenty of secrets in this game, and experimenting and exploring around the levels will often yield a new pathway or a gem, including those colored gems which are so sought after. And they are very cryptic as well. You aren't given any clues on how to find them aside from the fact that some of the door frames have that colored gem in them. But just to make it harder, some of the colored gems in these levels, you can't even access them in the level itself. You have to find another way to get back into the level, and it's just confusing. Like, there's one point where you are going down a pathway and it splits and you find a dead end. Only if you go up to the dead end and touch it, you'll notice that you go through it. And then because of that, you'll eventually find a hidden pathway and you'll go and find a gem. And there's so many of these, and they're all different as well. They're not just all secret walls, there's other ways to get these gems, and I think it's really creative. I was a kid when this game came out, and it was incredibly cryptic and very, very difficult. I think, honestly, I found maybe one, maybe two colored gems all by myself because it's just so hard. And back then, there wasn't really much of an internet, so I had to wait a few years before I finally finished this game. There's this one point where you're going through one of the snow levels in the second floor, and you can see the red gem just out of reach. No matter what you do, you can't reach it. You can run, you can jump, you can do those slide jumps and all that kinds of stuff, but you just can't get there. I spent so long on that level trying to figure out a way to get up there. Never could. I never figured it out. The internet solved my problems a few years later. Other than that, I never would have got it. You'll be collecting crystals in every stage, like I said earlier, and collecting all of them on the floor unlocks the boss for that floor. And while they are miles better than the first game, they can be a little bit boring. Tiny Tiger and Ripperoo just aren't very good. They're pretty boring. I suppose as the very first bosses of the game, they are serviceable, but honestly, they're not that good. The Komodo brothers are alright and a little bit interesting. The final boss with Cortex is an absolute joke when he was the best fight in the first game. And Jin, though, is the best boss by far. You are shooting Wumpa fruit at him in space, and he's in a mech suit and there's more than one form. Oh man, it's so fun, and he is just huge. Interspersed with all the levels are some cutscenes as well. Whenever you collect a certain number of crystals and come back to the hub world, one of the other main characters will pop up in the middle and give you some story and give you some jokes or give you some information, and it's really well done. A lot of the time you'll see Cortex come up and he'll tell you how like he's a good guy and he's trying to save the world, and then later on Coco comes up and she's like, no, I'm captured, he's a bad guy, don't listen to him. Even Embryo, the mad scientist from the first game, comes up and he's just like, yeah, I'm a mad scientist, I'm crazy, but I don't like Cortex because he got engine. Threw me out, what a dick. So now I'm trying to stop him, so you should help me out instead. It fleshes out so much of the story, and it fleshes out the characters in the world, and I like that the story is something that permeates the entire game. In Crash 1, the story is only there at the beginning and the end. There's little bits of story and world building throughout the game, but honestly, it's not really there. But this game does an excellent job with handling the story and the humor, and makes it feel like you're progressing through something because characters are changing and evolving as you're doing things in the game. Expanding upon the first game, we have many new types of levels and a few that are similar to the first game. Do you want levels with a rocket-powered board? Sure. Do you want levels that are in the dark and use fireflies to see? Sure. Do you want a level where you dig under the ground like Bugs Bunny? Well, you bet you've got it, son! They even updated the Warthog levels with Polar the polar bear. These are longer, larger, and offer greater deal of challenge than the first game, and you have more control over the character, which makes them much better and more fun to play. Also, the bonus levels are now platforms, and the boxes are required for the box gem, unlike the first game. There are also death bonus platforms where you must reach that platform without dying in the stage in order to use them. These offer new boxes and new paths that are harder than the main quest, but they are required if you want to get 100%. I have been saying a lot of praise for this game, but I do have some gripes, like how boring and pretty crummy the bosses are overall, except for Engine of course. The cryptic nature of the game meant that my little baby brain when I was playing this just couldn't cope and couldn't understand how to do things. The game is also harder in general than the first game, at least in my opinion, because the levels are much better designed, so they had more going on in the levels, where the first game was harder because of the tight controls and the precision platforming. I don't know, both games have their hard moments, but I just found the second game harder overall. There is a reward for 100%ing this game as well. In the first game, if you collect all of the gems, you were given a special level, and when you finish the level with all the gems, you get a nice little cutscene for the characters and what happened after the game finished. It's a little silly and fun, but it's there. In this game, you get another little cutscene finishing off the story pretty much, because when you kill Cortex, if you haven't done all the gems, it does feel like it just sort of ends, but now it's got that nice little conclusion to it. It's really not worth it though. When you go through this entire game going through all of this work and trying so hard to get all of these gems, only for an extra 30-second cutscene, it just doesn't feel like that was enough of a reward for doing all of this work. Especially when you have to play through some of the worst stages in all of Crash Bandicoot, the rocket levels. Oh man, I hate these so much. The controls feel wonky, they are slow, you can't really maneuver Crash in a way that is easy or fun. It is very hard to get through all the traps, and it's just boring as well. The perspective of the camera is not very good, and Crash gets in the way of a lot of the things. You have very poor depth perception in this level as well, so many times as I'm flying through, there'll be a cable going up and down, and I think, oh yeah, that's fine, I'm plenty far away. Zap, and I die. It is very frustrating and not very good. It is probably the worst levels of the entire series, to be honest, at least in my opinion. This game was also remastered as part of the Crash N. Sane trilogy, which improved the graphics and added a few tweaks. The first is that Crash controls the exact same in all three games, so people coming from the first game are used to how Crash feels, unlike original players who had to relearn how Crash feels. They removed the memory card save screen, which is an obvious move as there's no memory cards anymore, but now you can save at any time in the hub worlds. For some reason they changed the animation for how you warp into the levels, and man, this new one is very lame. Some of the levels have their perspectives altered to have more on screen, which makes some areas harder due to the change of depth, including those stupid rocket levels. The one thing that annoys me, but I actually secretly like, is that the loading screens for the colored gem levels actually give you a clue on how to get them. That's a really cool idea, and it helps a lot, especially for people like me who just didn't know how to get them. But it also gets rid of a lot of the mystery that this game has. I think it should have been something like every 10th loading screen, or maybe if you played the level a lot, then the clue for the loading screen would come up instead of every single time. One divisive addition are the time trials. Where the first game was not made for speed, but it asked you to do it anyway, this game is better for it. The sliding and the slide jumping and maneuverability of Crash makes it a lot more fun to try and do these time trials, and getting Sapphire honestly isn't all too hard. They even offer the running shoes as an upgrade at the end of the game, making these time trials even more fun and slightly easier in some cases. In my opinion, I think that Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back is worth it. It is far superior to the first game in practically every way. The graphics are better, the music is fantastic, the levels are so much fun, and they're so varied. There's just a lot more going on in the game. The cutscenes are funny, and the fact that the story permeates the entire game instead of just being shoehorned at the beginning and the end is good. The non-linear fashion of the level design, the clues and the progress tracking of the doorways is also very good. But I do have some gripes with this game, like the bosses being so poor, some of the levels being ridiculously hard for no reason. I'm looking at you, rocket levels, and the cryptic nature of the game makes it a little bit harder to get through because you just don't know how to get certain things. But at the same time, that's also one of the pluses. As a kid, I played this game a lot in order to try and figure out these puzzles, in order to try and get that 100%. So it kept bringing me back, it kept making me play it. So That's a good thing, right? Crash Bandicoot 2 is also my personal favorite of the entire trilogy because I just think it's the most polished, and I think just the level design and everything about it is just really, really good, really well done, and definitely worth it. Definitely play this game. It's just amazing. I don't care which one you play, either the original or the remastered. Both of them are really, really good. So guys, tell me what you thought about Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Is it your favorite Crash game or not? Like I said, it is my personal favorite Crash game, but a lot of people like Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, and I fully understand why. But tell me what you guys think. Did you hate the rocket levels? Is it just me? Am I just really bad at depth perception, or do other people have that problem as well? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! And here they have upgraded the graphics, they upgraded the music, they upgraded the set designs, set designs, that's movies. In Crash 1, we had Tree Islands. I wrote it as Tree Islands, supposed to be 3.